channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Today is Thursday, and for today's video, I went back into fall a little bit and created some fall signs. I hope you guys really like them, and I do apologize for the delay again in my video. I was feeling pretty cruddy yesterday and just couldn't muster the strength to get everything finished up in time to have it posted yesterday. So happy Thursday to all of you, and without further ado, let's get to today's video. My first project is a very simple one. I have this piece of wood left over. It's from the bottom of a magazine rack I took apart, and I am giving this 2 coats of DIY's color called Farm Fresh on the front and the back of this piece. Once that's done and my Farm Fresh paint is completely dry, I grabbed one of the new stencils I just got off of Amazon, and I'm using DIY's Crinoline and a little makeup sponge I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just pouncing that paint onto my stencil. Now, I normally go over it the first time with a pretty light coat of paint and a little heavier coat the second go round. Once that was done and the paint was dry again, I just took it outside and gave it a good spray with some Rust-Oleum matte enamel spray. For my second project, I grabbed this scrap piece of cedar fence board that I've had in my stash for a while, and I painted each side of it with a coat of DIY's Crinoline. Then I had some bleed through from a stain apparently that I hadn't seen, so I had to shellac it and give it another coat of Crinoline on both sides. Then it was on to adding this transfer. This is from the Cozy Comforts transfer set by Redesign with Prima. It's one of the newer ones. I'm currently out of this one, but I've got some more on order. And I just placed my transfer at the end of the board, and then using my transfer stick, I am rubbing that transfer down into my piece while I peel back that piece of vellum, just going slowly, making sure that my entire transfer is adhered to my board. Once I've got the transfer down, I grabbed my piece of vellum and I rubbed over the transfer just to make sure it is adhered really well to my board and that there are no wrinkles or air bubbles. Then it was on to another stencil that came in the pack that I got from Amazon. Again, these are pretty simple projects, and I am just going over this stencil with Weathered Wood by DIY. Once I have that all done, I went ahead and filled in the little gaps that were in the stencil. I didn't do this on all of them, but for this one, I just felt like it needed to happen. And then once that's done and the paint is dry again, it is time for a seal coat. Now, the reason I use a spray sealer on these is I don't want to take any chances of my paint running or smearing with a top coat that I have to brush on. Project 3 is one that I actually started some time ago, and I ran into some issues with it, got really frustrated, and ended up just setting it on my counter. And I was having some creative blocks this week trying to come up with some ideas for projects for today's video. And I saw it sitting there and I thought, you know what, maybe I should just do some signs for my fall displays and incorporate this one in them and get it done. So that's what I decided to do. As you can see here, I started with this project by giving it a coat of Rust-Oleum's 2X matte black spray front and back. I let that dry, and then I went over just the frame portion very carefully with 2 coats of Summer Crush by DIY. I also painted the back with 2 coats of Summer Crush as well, and then set it aside to dry. Once my paint was completely dry, I went in with some 220 grit sandpaper and did a little bit of distressing. I wanted some of that black peeking through the orange paint. I figured that would be a great look for either Halloween or my fall displays. Once that was done, I went ahead and rinsed it off in my sink to get rid of all the sanding dust. And since it was wet already, I went ahead and did a little bit more distressing with my damp shop towel. Once my piece was dry again, I grabbed DIY's Crinoline and very carefully painted the inner portion of this. I wanted to put a transfer on this piece, and I wanted it to have a nice, clear, clean background so that it would really pop against that orange. So I did go over this with 2 coats of Crinoline, and I let that dry completely before I tried putting my transfer down. Now for this piece, I had chosen a beautiful transfer out of the Cozy Comforts transfer set, and I carefully placed it down onto my piece and began rubbing it with the transfer stick. And I very quickly realized that all it was doing was pulling up the paint, not just the crinoline, but the black paint underneath it, all the way down to the blue that it was originally when I got it. So I ended up scrapping this, and you guys, I even went back, repainted the crinoline and sealed it and tried to put a transfer on it a second time, and it still peeled the paint right off of whatever paint was underneath. And this is one of the learning curves about doing transfers, is that sometimes if you don't know what paint you're starting with, it might be best to just sand it off and start with a clean slate. At any rate, I had to sand off the remnants of the other transfer I tried and paint this again with a coat of crinoline to get rid of the shadows of my previous effort. And I went ahead and grabbed another one of the stencils I got with the pack from Amazon and placed that onto my frame and used Summer Crush to fill it in. So again, just carefully pouncing that paint with a makeup sponge onto the stencil. I go over it first with a very light coat and then second with a little heavier coat. And once I'm finished, I go ahead and peel off that particular stencil, and then I grabbed one that just had a little leaf to fill in the void under the word hello. Once I was finished with my stenciling and my paint was dry, I took this one outside as well and gave it a good coat front and back with that Rust-Oleum 2X Clear Matte Spray. I'm so glad to have this little frame finally finished. I think it turned out pretty darn cute. What do you guys think? For my fourth project, I knew I wanted to use these castings that I had created a while back using the Falling for Fall Decor mold by Redesign with Prima. I love these little pumpkins. They're so detailed and beautiful. And so I grabbed them and painted the large one with Summer Crush. I'm going to paint the medium one with Bohemian blue, and the smallest one I'm going to put crinoline on. And then it also had some little vines that I am painting with DIY's faded burlap. Now the actual sign I'm going to be using for this project I've had in my stash for a while. It looks like old wood, but it's actually resin, I believe. I wanted it to have a very weathered wood look to it though, so I'm starting off by using DIY's crinoline, and I'm not overloading my brush. I'm just putting a little bit of paint on my brush and then really, really lightly pulling the paint down from the top and just trying not to leave too much paint on the board. I really wanted some of that wood peeking through. Once that was dry, I went around the edges a little bit, and then I grabbed out weathered wood, and I'm using a chip brush for this, and I am dry brushing some of that weathered wood over top of the crinoline. Now my first coat I always put on pretty darn light. I wipe off almost all of the paint and just put a very, very little bit of that weathered wood on. Then I work my weathered wood into spots, making it a little bit darker. I will use my brush's side and just really rub down into the crinoline to add some dark splotches. I really wanted this again to look like an old picket fence. Once I was happy with how it looked, I went ahead and sealed it up really well with Rust-Oleum's 2X Clear Matte Spray. Then it was on to my transfers, and I am using pieces of the transfer set called Pumpkin Patch Galore. It's definitely a beautiful set. The colors Bohemian Blue, Summer Crush, and Crinoline are almost a perfect match to the colors that are in this transfer set, which is why I painted my castings the way I did. I ended up adding 2 of the pumpkins from this transfer set, 1 to each side, and then 1 of the little leaves in it as well. Once I had my transfers all set, it was on to doing some stenciling. And for this one, I decided to use Bohemian Blue as my color for my stencil. I was very, very careful to go over it the first time with a very light coat of the paint, and I honestly ended up putting 3 coats on this because it was a rough surface and I really didn't want to squish any of that paint underneath the stencil. I did have a couple places where it bled through just a little bit, but for the most part, I was pretty happy with my result. Once again, I peeled off my stencil and waited for my paint to dry, and then I sealed this in with a coat of the Rust-Oleum 2X matte spray. My last steps are to seal my castings, and for that I am using clear wax by DIY in just a nice even coat over each one, wiping it back with a shop towel to remove the excess, adding a layer of dark wax by DIY, and again using a shop towel to wipe off the excess. And then to add just a little bit of bling, I'm adding some Eternal Decor Wax by Redesign with Prima, just using my fingertip to apply a light coat to all of the details on each of the castings. Then all that's left to do is glue my castings to the front of my sign. And for that, I grabbed out my Titebond Quick and Thick, put a little bit on the back of each of them, spread it in a nice thin layer with my fingertip, and placed each casting down where I wanted it. This sign is finally finished. I absolutely love how it came out. I hope you guys do too. That's it from here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my little foray back into fall. I know I was working on Halloween and I was really enjoying it, honestly, but I was kind of looking at my calendar and realized I need to get started on some Christmas things, you guys. So that is probably the direction that I'm going to start to be headed, is Christmas. So if you join me on Saturday, which I hope you will, chances are that's what you'll be seeing. So I hope you're prepared for that. Anyway, if you did enjoy today's video, I would appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up. And also, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit that little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And of course, don't forget to drop a comment below and let me know what you thought of my fall projects for today. Anyway, for Saturday again, probably some Christmas. There's some beautiful decoupage papers that came out in Redesign with Prima's recent release, along with some beautiful molds, and I'm really kind of looking forward to using some of them. So I hope you'll join me for that. Also, just a quick reminder, the paint and products you see me use can be purchased through me at my website, and that's www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. I know I have some things that are out of stock, both Redesign with Prima and DIY. They're coming, you guys, so they should be here any day, and then I will get those restocked and up on my website for you. Anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your week. I know there's not a lot left to it. It's almost the weekend already. And I hope you'll join me back here on Saturday. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you Saturday. Bye.